Good morning. My name is Dick Lewis. I'm the Director of Planning and Zoning for the City of Franklin, and I'm also the Special Projects Coordinator. I've been with the city for a little over 13 years. Major problems in the city of Franklin, I think some of it relates to history, in the fact that we are, like so many other communities in New England, an old mill town. Mills created lots of development, lots of people lived close to the downtown, so we have urbanization kind of in the immediate area of downtown. We have large mill buildings downtown, and a lot of them have not seen some of the care and maintenance that we would like to see. They're a little run down, and they are just an economic challenge for redevelopment because of their size, because of the age, and because of the condition of some of these buildings. The solution is going to be a cooperative approach. I think the City of Franklin has developed a good project team, and we have developed some good, solid working relationships with organizations such as Perma-City Life, with Mill City Park. We have been very fortunate to have acquired the resources and capacities of Neil Cannon, who was funded through a grant from the Rural Development Agency at USDA. He's been on board for a little over a year and a half. We were successful in getting a second grant from Rural Development this year, and so we'll be keeping him on board. And he's been doing some amazing work in finding some investment capacity to put into the downtown and supporting some of the great ideas that we've had brought forward through Perma-City Life, Todd Workman, and Marty Parashand at Mill City Park. I think we've also had the benefit of some good proactive outside factors coming into play at this same time, kind of forming a nucleus of good ideas. One is that the Franklin City Council had the foresight to create and approve a tax increment financing district, which is basically a funding mechanism to do some public improvements, public-private improvements in the downtown that would help support economic redevelopment. They've also approved a 79E, which is kind of a historic tax credit, you might say, for the redevelopment of some of these buildings. And both those things act as incentives for developers and helps spur interest and involvement by those developers. The other factor is the redevelopment of the Riverbend Mill right behind City Hall. The Concord Area Trust for Community Housing, the Catch organization, is now in the stages of redeveloping that into 45 sort of affordable workforce housing. That building has sat largely vacant for probably upwards of 20 years. There have been some scattered uses in there, but it has been largely vacant. The building itself, though, was remarkably in good shape. There was a few minor roof leaks, but Kitch has gone in there and they are actively working on the reconstruction of that building into these apartment units, and they are looking to open that up for housing probably later this year, maybe early winter time. So that will be an important investment, and I've always said that when you're coming into Franklin from the west and you're crossing the mill pond, and you look across the mill pond and you see the Riverbend Mill, when you see lights on in those windows and new windows in place, that's going to make a big difference as to how people view the city. I think it'll help change the character and the feeling that people have about the city of Franklin. One of the other important things that we dealt with all of these mill buildings is the historic contamination of those sites through the industrial uses that have occurred there. The ownership has changed, but some of the industrial activity has continued. And the city has been fortunate to receive a lot of support from both the Lakes Region Planning Commission and from the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency with funding for brownfield assessments, which means that we hire an engineering firm to go in and perform what's called a phase 1 and or a phase 2 assessment of the property. They look at the historical uses, the types of activities, the types of chemicals or other materials that were used that could contaminate the soil. They identify where the contamination is located, and you can use that information to support the cleanup, the eventual cleanup of these properties. The city took ownership of what's commonly referred to as the former Chow Pasta building. down across from River Street on Central Street. And we're doing some phase 2 work there and looking for some redevelopment options, and we have some good ideas in mind, and we're working towards those end goals. We're also doing some brownfield assessment work, which will lead us basically to the point of a remedial action plan, which is a cleanup plan for the Stanley Mill building, which is at the end of Memorial Street, right before you go into Odell Park and the stone gate there, stone archway there. That's an important building in that it can support, some redevelopment activity. There's the Armory building, and then there's the old mill building. There could be a combination of some redevelopment, maybe the creation of some parking that would help both maybe the catch housing project, or would also be available for activities that are occurring in Odell Park. We can sort of open up that area to the residents and to the visitors to the city. Put in a walkway, a bikeway, put in some picnic benches, kind of again reorient people towards the river, which has for too long been cut off from residents with all the various brick buildings that we have. Economic development is a time-consuming process, as Neil Cannon has said. It takes a lot of players, it takes a lot of interested parties, it takes a lot of economic interest and investment on the part of state and federal agencies, tax credit programs, etc. So putting together all these pieces is complicated, which is one of the reasons why we brought Neil on board, and we have been exceedingly pleased with the progress he has made to date to support the work of both Permit City Life and Marty at the Mill City Park. I think the Mill City Park is going to be, and the Whitewater Park is going to be a challenging project, but it is a very important project. I think, as others have said, the motto of Franklin is the Three River City, and one of those rivers is the Winnipesaukee River. And for so many years, there were industrial buildings lining the river from Central Street all the way into Cross Mill Road at the Tilton Northfield boundary. And those buildings are gone, but some of the old infrastructure, some of the bricks, some of the rebar, we can get a lot of those things cleaned up, and I think we can make a very solid case to the Department of Environmental Services that some of the rehab work for the Whitewater Park will be of environmental benefit. So I think that's one of the selling points we have. As Neil Cannon pointed out, the economic tourist dollars that this Whitewater Park would bring in are important both for the city, the region, and for the state. Tourism is a huge industry in the state of New Hampshire, and this would be the first Whitewater Park in New England. While there are some rafting opportunities in New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Maine, Vermont, a whitewater park where you really physically create some of the whitewater features in the river, this would be the first one in the state, or in New England. So that would be very important, I think, and I think would create a lot of interest. As Marty has said on many, many occasions, the number of individuals who live within a 2.5-hour drive of Boston, to Franklin, to come up here and enjoy the park, to watch people, to watch friends or family members, take a tour, take a turn on the Whitewater Park, participate in a competition, that kind of a thing. It just has tremendous potential, and I think that it will really recreate the rivers and turn the rivers again into a very important feature of downtown Franklin.